So let's get into the news, shall we? And the first bit of news is comic book news. And if I had planned ahead, I would have put this on the back on my TV. But they have announced the new. Oh, first off, Marvel has announced that Jean Grey, the original pre or post Phoenix, we don't know, is coming back.
Last killed off by Grant Morrison, I believe. But it's so hard to keep up with the comics these days.
Actually, no, I believe that sounds about right because she hasn't come back since that last time. So
right, except that she has.
Well,
and then there was like 1,000 Phoenixes running around, and we'll get into the repetitiveness of this in a minute. But yeah, so Jean Grey is returning as the character Phoenix. That is pretty much all she's known for. Other than calling her boyfriend in the cartoon series in the 90s Cyclops, even though he did have an actual first name. It's just like every romantic scene between Jean Grey, whose superhero name is Jean Grey, and Cyclops, aka Scott Summers. It's like, oh, Cyclops, shut up. Like, oh man. Like, the cartoons have not necessarily gotten a lot better, but there was definitely better examples, and a lot of us have a love of that 90s X-Men cartoon series because it was very good at adapting from the comics, but at the same time it was just so cheesy. It was, in some ways, it was just so bad. It's like watching 90s and 80s superhero movies and that was all we had, and now having to compare them to things from the last 10, 15 years, they don't hold up. And why would they? But how many old movies hold up? It's touch and go on some of that stuff. But they really don't hold up. But when we were kids, man, they were awesome. And some things it's like, okay, so we've got a modern day Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, couple of films, but they don't seem to hold up compared to the original ones. And the original ones were hokey and kind of like puppety costumes and everything, but they just felt a lot more purely close to what the comics were, and the new ones are all just like over stylized, so it can go both ways.
Yeah, so Marvel has announced they're doing a limited series called the Resurrection of Jean Grey, which again I think, as we said, she hasn't really been back fully. Like, there've been like these other little like instances. I would compare it almost to, from what I understand, of Barry Allen when he died during Crisis on Infinite Earths, where he came back in these little bits, but it wasn't like, he's back, here's his new regular series. No, it was just bring him in.
Well, I was speaking more of the young versions of the original 5 X-Men being around, and somehow that's still, while never making sense, just doesn't seem to matter anymore. You've got the young versions of some of these characters coexisting with the current day versions, and current day Iceman suddenly discovering that he must be gay because the young version of him is, and the only reason the young version that he decided that he was is because young Jean Grey said, Bobby, you're gay. Really? I didn't know that. Well, I guess that must be true. And it was just like, we'll get into who did that in a few minutes too, but it was a poorly written scene to make what is probably some very interesting comics as the results. Yeah, but that moment didn't feel earned and felt really kind of cruel. And you've been outed to yourself by a friend who read your mind and invaded your privacy. That said, this is old school Jean Grey to fix the issues that we have with older school Jean Grey.
So, okay, to make this easier on you, when we say this,
Jean Grey Prime.
We are talking about the adult Jean Grey, not teenage Jean Grey, who is the time-displaced one.
No, because nerd culture has leaked into porn, and adult Jean Grey sounds like something else entirely. I don't...
Okay, in her 30s, Jean Grey?
We'll just call her Jean Grey Prime. That for some reason, that rings to me, even though we don't know that that's necessarily the case, because Jean Grey was supposed to be Phoenix, and then when Jean Grey came back to life after the whole Dark Phoenix thing, it turned out she wasn't ever really Phoenix. It was some clone or something. And then Madeline Pryor, and oh man, so many Jean Greys. It's almost as many Wolverines. It's just so bad.
But anyways, we are so off track of this story here, because they've announced the writing and art team for this, and then they've announced the roster for X-Men Red. This is the series that is going to take place. That is this Jean Grey. That's going to be taking place in the Resurrection of Jean Grey. That she is going to be leading. So they're going to have 3 X-Men color books. I think we're 3 away from just having X-Men Rainbow.
I'm going to go into that in a second too.
Yeah,
but yeah.
But so far, and Corey, you can give us backstory on some of these characters, because I'm familiar with a few of them. Well, actually, most of them.
But, all right. So the creative team is Tom Taylor, who is currently writing All New Wolverine, and I think might be writing the Resurrection of Jean Grey for Marvel. I'm not 100% on that, but so he's going to be introducing this new team and new book. Mahmoud Asrar is the artist, and then Travis Charest is going to be doing the covers. Travis did a really, to me, just fantastic run of Wildcats in the 90s with Alan Moore writing. Always liked his work, but he is not super fast, so it makes sense that he's a cover artist on this.
Yeah. So some of the team, they've announced the team. They were teasing it. It was weird because in my Feedly thing today, because I didn't have to go into work until 4. So when I checked it at 10, they had the, hey, Marvel's teased this, and then like an hour later, here's the team. I'm like, but usually when you tease something, you're doing it over a couple days, not.
Yeah, they did. They did the classic thing where they show the cover and they have the first person on the team, Jean, in the middle, show her, and everybody else is blacked out, and then slowly they reveal the other characters throughout the day. But they did them in groups of 2, so they really didn't want to stretch it out too long. And some of them were kind of obvious. You could tell from the outlines of the claws of X-23 / Wolverine / Laura, and the hand of Nightcrawler. Although again, multiple Nightcrawlers jumping around. So see which one this is. You could tell who some of these characters were. There was some question based off of the hairstyle and the pointed ears of whether it was Namor or Northstar.
Yeah.
So it turns out to be. So yeah. So there we've got it off.
Real quick, because I got from my comic book store the Marvel Value Stamped book that they've been doing with all of the Marvel Legacy issues. But inside they have advertised nice and big the Phoenix Resurrection story, and actually it is written by Matthew Rosenberg with art by Lennon Yu, Carlos Pacheco, Joe Bennett, Ramon Rosanas, and Elizabeth Torque.
Okay, well, I recognize more the artist than I do. Yeah. I don't recognize the writer, unfortunately.
Gosh, he did something recently, but I can't think of it right now. But anyways, let's get on here the team, because I actually like this team. This is really cool. The Wakandan mutant, which I didn't know he was Wakandan, Jensel. He is in the upper left corner. When you look at this, his with the power to increase his muscle mass for short periods of time.
Yeah, he's interesting because he was introduced when Storm was married to Black Panther, and she transferred him over to the Xavier School because his powers are uncontrollable. As he uses his powers more and more, he gets stronger, but it will sort of take over his body, and eventually he won't be able to contain his own strength. So he's covered with tattoos that are made from vibranium to kind of help keep him in place, but he's a danger to himself. It's not dissimilar from Hulk in that hulking out makes Hulk dangerous to himself and others, but in this it's more he uses his powers and he's more likely to die young. And so that I guess kind of works with what the name is of Gentle, because you don't really want to overdo stuff. I guess he also doesn't feel anything. He has no sense of touch at this point because of his powers. He's supposed to be at a power level of Colossus, or potential power level of a Colossus, which is a class 100 in the Marvel Universe measurements. And that's the other thing, is you're going to look at this and you're going to see parallels to other X-Men teams and other X-Men characters and how they play off it. So I'm interested to see what his character is like personality wise to play off of what his power set is. Yeah.
The next one, actually, I'm going to do the next 2 because they're both someone that or characters that Tom Taylor is very familiar with, because he is writing their book. The young Wolverine clone Gabby, who is in the middle left, she has a single bone claw in each hand, an insensitivity to pain, and a healing factor. This was when the start of the all-new Wolverine book. She was one of 3 girls who were clones of Laura Kinney, a clone, who is the other one we're going to talk about here, the all-new Wolverine. with the same powers as Wolverine. The difference being she has 2 claws in her hands and then 1 claw in her foot.
Yeah, Laura Kinney, if you aren't familiar with the comics, if you saw the Logan movie, she was what the character was that Logan was protecting in that film, just in a more adult version. And she's only ever really been an adult version in the comics since she was introduced by Chris Yost, and I never remember the other guy's name. I feel so bad. Craig Kyle. In the X-Men cartoon series that they had years ago, they introduced X-23 on that, and then they brought her over to the comics. And then Joe Quesada was using her in NYX, which was New York X-Men, which was kind of like a out of continuity thing that they moved into continuity. And she replaced Wolverine eventually in the role when Logan died. So right off the bat, we've got a clone of Wolverine and then a clone of Wolverine. I have stuff to say about this. We'll get to it. But interesting because Gabby is young and pretty innocent and not as corrupted as I guess her sisters were. And so to see her on the team and gentle on the team, it seems like it's not a team that's meant for slugfests, or it's going to lead to some emotional turmoil if it results in that, because these are characters that, while they're very capable of getting into blowout fights, probably shouldn't, either due to their ages or their physical ailments and stuff.
So Gabby, who she doesn't have a name yet, but she's a code name. She started out, she was the one mutant, the one out of her sisters, out of her 2 other sisters that didn't have a healing factor, or have, so they were all really careful. Actually, no, none of them had a healing factor, but she can't feel any pain and all that. And Growly's asking, isn't Gabby one of the X-23 clones or the 23 other clones? No, so it's separate because X-23 was like the 23rd trial of the cloning process of Wolverine. Actually, wait, I think that's wrong. Anyways, no, Gabby was taken out afterwards and made, a separate cloning process from Laura as opposed to from Wolverine. You
got to think duplicity. Growly, it's more of a, if you've ever seen, oh man, I'm really dating myself, the Michael Keaton movie where he made a bunch of clones and then some of them didn't bake all the way and just got worse and worse. It's more like that. As at some point you reach the clone nexus of you're just creating more goo.
So the next team member that we're going to talk about is the team leader Jean Grey, returned to life under as of yet unexplained circumstances. Whereabouts of the Phoenix Force currently unknown. We will find out in Phoenix Resurrection.
Thank you, Growly. You're right. Multiplicity.
Yeah. Namor the Submariner in the upper right corner of the cover with the power of flight and super strength, and also being a massive dick.
Yeah, assholery is Namor's biggest power set. And man, they have really pushed to make Namor a part of the X-Men for a long time, because they a few years ago they said, oh yeah, he's the first mutant and everything. It's like, okay, but we've never really made any kind of ties to him being relation to the real mutants like the X-Men mutants, but they just harder and harder as much as they can. And I guess it makes a certain degree of sense because they can't use him in Fantastic Four, which is where he was introduced as both a foil and a friend, and sometimes a fuck buddy for Sue Storm. And we can't use him in Avengers because, man, the Avengers fucking hate him. And they're right.
Well, to be fair though, I don't think there's a lot of X-Men that like him either.
No, but I mean the Avengers actively, like, I do believe Black Panther tried to kill him. Mm-hmm. And everybody who read the book was like, fucking kill this guy.
No, wait, no, okay. He was going to, but had mercy on him and hid him from Wakanda, who wanted to kill him because he flooded Wakanda.
Right, but I thought he actually stabbed him with a vibranium blade or something. And you just look on his face. Like I said, I haven't read comics in a while.
Yeah.
But the stuff that I pick up on is like, okay, that looked like a cool moment. That looked like an earned moment.
Okay, I'll put it to you this way. the last time you really saw the Submariner, he was teaming, in air quotes, with Thanos and Thanos's minions, going
Right.
to other Earths to destroy them, to prevent the Earth. Basically, this is before Battle World and Secret Wars 2. Secret Wars
Well,
2.
he was also part of the Squadron Supreme book, where they both killed him at the beginning of the series, and then they brought him back to life at the end of the series
Yeah.
because it's Marvel.
Yeah. The other one, like Corey mentioned before, is Nightcrawler. He's in the middle right, with the power of teleportation.
Nightcrawler, one of the greatest X-Men of all time.
Yeah, and I believe Nightcrawler's on X-Men Gold.
Right. And so expect some shifting in those other teams.
Yeah.
At some point.
And then a new character, a brand new character whose origins and powers have not yet been revealed, Trinary. She's in the lower left-hand corner.
Yeah. Don't know anything about her. She looks a little bit like M from Generation X. The name Trinary reminds me of Binary, which was an old Carol Danvers identity that was created when she was hanging out with the X-Men after she had her powers and memories stolen by Rogue. And she went with the X-Men into space and fought the Brood with the Shi'ar and gained powers in there. And that's when she became Binary for a number of years. I don't know that there's any ties at all to that, but it's immediately what I think of when I look at the name.
Yeah.
Somebody else mentioned Triathlon, who was a Avenger, I think, in the Kurt Busiek run, if I remember correctly on that. So this is our team, and not knowing Trinary's powers, we've got our teleporter, who is very agile and that kind of keep you off your toes thing. We've got two Wolverine characters, one of them who is much more Wolverine in attitude than the other. We've got a strong, tough, kind of not exactly armored, but invincible sort of dude in Gentle, who should not utilize his powers. And we've got Super Dick in Namor, who I'm sure we won't have to worry about him spending a lot of time like, oh, I got to get near water, because it's a silly thing to have to try to concentrate on, especially in a team series. But he'll mostly just be like, who do I want to bang on this team? Because I'm Namor, and I want to show you my fish stick. It can be an interesting dynamic. It's hard to look at the team without knowing the background as to why they create this new team and why it's X-Men Red, other than the fact that it's a redhead in charge. I really thought it was just going to be a group of all Jean Grey clones. I thought it was going to be Hope and Rachel Summers and Goblin Queen and Young Jean. And I just like it seemed like, because we had the team of essentially of Wolverines in X-Force a few years ago, where they just got like every badass and put them on the team. Like, you got a blade? Yeah, show up over here. Yeah, we're just going to go kill things all day. Why not? But that brings me back to a personal history I have with the X-Men, but not the real X-Men. But in the 90s, when the cartoon series was coming out, and I think I've probably mentioned this on the show before, I met a good number of friends and got started in writing and stuff on the old Prodigy bulletin board service. And in particular, in the Paper RPGs forums, there was a group that built up around the premiere of the X-Men cartoon series. And it was a lot of people that were play acting as different X-Men characters. And of course, there were way too many people to just be characters from the show or even characters from the comics to a certain degree. So a lot of us made up our own characters. And again, because there were so many people, you couldn't just have, at that point in time in the comics, there was X-Men Gold and X-Men Blue, one book being written by Scott Lobdell, and the other book being written by Fabian Nicieza. So we had multicolor groups, and they didn't really have a theme for some of the teams. It was just like, this is X-Men White, and this is X-Men Blue, and this is X-Men Gold, and this is X-Men Green, and this is X-Men whatever. And when I joined up and I created my character, I wound up in X-Men Red, and X-Men Red did have a theme, which was more of, it was like the kind of more cutthroat version of the X-Men, not necessarily like the the Black Ops team, because there was a Black X-Men Black, but it was a little bit more of, you were going to get more mature storylines. You were going to get more adult stuff. It was led by my friend Josh, who was a werewolf character, and my other best friend Anne and her werewolf character. And my character was a guy that was in silver armor and had swords and guns and everything. And then we also had silly stuff. Like we had a guy who hung out with us that was just, he turned into a dog. And he spent most of his time just as a dog. And since it was people playing online, it was just a lot of silly, fun stories. Like my character spent most of his time looking to see who stole his cream rinse because his poor hair couldn't handle not being conditioned well enough. And so the other day, Josh posted on my board, and he's like, "Hey, here's this new X-Men Red team coming out." And I said, "Needs a werewolf." And he was posting today as they were showing the characters. He's like, "Well, there's no werewolf here." I'm like, "Yeah, but there's 2 Wolverines. I feel like we kind of are meeting our quota." And I can see Gentle as being like maybe my version of my character in some similarities. And the super dick version of Namor, I created a character that was essentially like my first asshole character, and everybody who saw me playing the one character who was nice and very knightly and honorific and everything, it was funny, and people thought, "Oh yeah, Corey's great at writing humor." Then I start writing this other character, and this guy is just pure 100% asshole the entire time. I'm like, who's writing this guy? and so I'm looking at this, and I'm seeing the parallels between our X-Men Red and this X-Men Red. Oh, and I should mention, later on, as I got voted up to being one of the kind of leads of the whole group, I reassigned all the X-Men teams and gave them reasons for being. So X-Men Red kind of continued being what it was, but X-Men Black became the Blackhawks team. The X-Men Silver became the Magic-based team. X-Men White, I think it was, because it already existed, became more of like the X Factor, became the public face, the doing, like if you need somebody to go and show up on the news or be like out in front of cameras, that would be them, and so on and so forth. X-Men Green, I think, was our eco-terrorism team or whatever, dealing with challenges. It made sense at the time. Very 90s. Yeah. And before Jeff Johns ever did fucking shit with Green Lantern. It was already there. But it's just so funny to me to see this happening now, because one of the people that we used to talk to on the bulletin boards was Scott Libdell. And that was before he was doing Generation X. Like, I remember Generation X was coming out. I'm like, "Hey, Scott, let me tell you about some character ideas that you should throw in Generation X." And Scott, to his credit, didn't listen to me at all. I fucking landed everything himself, did a great book, did one of my favorite comics of all time.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So the next story is one that's sort of going to get me upset here. Not incredibly, because, you know, I understand, but DC and Warner Brothers have cast Billy Batson, or the role of Billy Batson, in the Shazam film, and it is Asher Angel. Now, some people might know him from the Disney Channel show Andy Mack, where he plays the main character, Andy Mack's love interest on there. He is going to be opposite Zachary Levi, who I already had some, like, I was a little bit like, you know, I didn't know, like, I love Zachary Levi, don't get me wrong, but I was like, he seems a little too thin to be, you know, the superhero, you know, in the big, you know, muscly physique type.
You're used to seeing him be kind of scrawny as Chuck. Yeah. Or like I mentioned a couple weeks ago, when I used to watch him on Less Than Perfect, you know, he was kind of the jerk of the office. I think his name was Kip, but we haven't seen him like all studded up. But it's like seeing John Krasinski from The Office. Is that
John Krasinski? Yeah.
Seeing him all buff as shit now, and the stuff that he's doing, like, isn't he doing something for Amazon where he's playing I think the old Harrison Ford role that he used to play in, The Hunt for Red October wasn't him, but for Patriot Games. Yeah, I can't think of the name.
But anyways, my problem here with them casting Asher Angel,
Jack Ryan. Sorry,
Jack Ryan. Garley just put it in there too. Isn't that also the one of the Tom Cruise franchises that they tried to a new franchise they tried to give him?
No, that's different. But
Is that Jack Reacher?
yeah, I think so. But Chris Pine did a Jack Ryan movie not too long ago.
Yeah.
Fucking Ben Affleck did a Jack Ryan movie. So Jack Ryan's been played by several different people. John Krasinski is just as qualified as anybody else. But again, we're used to seeing John Krasinski as Jim from The Office, and he hasn't played that character for a long time, and he's certainly played other stuff. But in our minds, it's still, this is the guy who mooned over Pan for 15 seasons or whatever, and you love Jim, and you really like John Krasinski, and you want to see him get his next role, but it's just like, I don't see him playing such an American badass. But he was someone who was considered for Captain America.
Yeah, true. And that's another one. That's another one. Like, I mean, you know, even Chris Evans, he buffed up for Captain America. I mean, he wasn't, you know, like, you know, super duper skinny, but he wasn't.
Well, he wasn't Captain America buff, but then I've seen The Losers a number of times. I love that movie.
Yeah.
And they have him stripped down more than once. That guy is fucking cut. That guy has always been kind of cut.
But
Even
you
back
look
to Another Teen Movie, he was always in good shape.
Yeah.
But you're right. There's a level that you hit when you become a Marvel star, and a DC star as well. And I'm sure that Zachary Levi will get into DC superhero on screen shape.
Yeah, trust me. It was one of those, like, that part I don't have the problem with. It's more with Asher Angel, because from what I've seen from him, like, I've only seen him on Andy Mack, and I haven't followed you know, too closely with season 2. I watched season 1, and every time they're talking, and I should preface for people, Andy Mack is created by the guy who created Lizzie McGuire on Disney Channel. So there's some pedigree here behind the show, and it's really good. It's also filmed in Salt Lake City. But I kid you not, and this is where, audio listeners, I'm sorry, but there are scenes where he just has the dumbest, like, the look, and I'm like, you're supposed to show some emotion here in this scene, and it just seems like you're all
there's not a high expectation from those styles of shows. I mean, they're all filmed in such a way that they seem very similar, and they focus on the silly. They're meant for teenagers.
No, this is different. This isn't like the Raven's Home or Casey Undercover or Bizarre.
You're saying a lot of things that I've never watched, so I don't have a lot of reference.
It's separate. It's not the Disney Channel sitcom stuff. It's single camera. It's more drama than anything else.
Okay.
It's you know, it's hitting this different spots here with it, because it's, like I said, it's not these, like, the kids don't really act, they just yell louder and stuff and all that. It's a little bit,
but is the level of what the expectations are for that show the same as what they're getting from a movie? There's got to be a reason why it was cast.
I think, honestly, I think he could do better. I think it's, so far when I've seen of him in season 2, he has done better in acting. You know, not so much of the just looking dumb while you're listening to your girlfriend talk to you about how she's super duper jealous of you hanging out with this girl with the pixie haircut and all that stuff. And like,
are you talking about Scott Pilgrim? Because it sounds like you're talking about Scott Pilgrim
a little bit. The main character, Andy Mack, she has like really short hair, and they say with the pixie haircut. I'm like, is that a pixie haircut? But anyways, it's, I don't know. I feel like I need to watch more of Andy Mack to see if he's improved before I go, okay.
Or maybe see other stuff that he's been in. So I'm gonna give 2 examples of, and not to counter you, but to say that the expectations based off of the first things that we were seeing them in and where they wound up. One of them is Jared Leto. Jared Leto, the first time I ever saw was in My So-Called Life. And I loved My So-Called Life. I was watching it on ABC when it was on, and then had to go over to MTV to get the rest of the episodes when they started re-airing it. It was very sweet, good show. Jared Leto was the boy that Claire Danes fawned all over, and he leaned great. But the expectations of Jared Leto from that point, like, loved him because he was on the show, and loved and hated his character to many a degree. But he played him well, but he didn't like blow me away with his acting ability or his chops. But you take that and you look at Jared Leto of today and the vast varied body of work, and you can make comments about his Joker and stuff, but he's certainly proven in a lot of different roles that he's a very fine actor, and not a bad singer. The other one would be Will Smith. Will Smith, who had a lot of charm and was great in front of a camera, working a crowd from being Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince and all that. But when you had the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, you watched him learn how to act during the seasons of that show. Because in that first season, no. Second season, no. Third season, no, but maybe. And then it just kind of went on. And definitely by the time he started hitting the big screen, it was like, this guy can command a movie. His performance is good enough that it keeps you riveted to it. And again, not all of his work is the greatest in the world, but he's consistently watchable. He's good. You know, you can put him in a shit film and you're going to walk out of there saying, well, that was a shit film. Will Smith was stupid for choosing to be in that. But that's what you get when you're fucking listening to a guy who made Avatar. But still, these are two guys that young actors were better than what their first roles were, or were probably adequate in their first roles, but learned over time. And something made them choose this kid to be our Billy Batson. And how much of the weight is going to be on him versus how much of the weight is going to be on Zachary Levi. And I trust in Zachary Levi to command a performance, even in something that is going to be outside of the norm from him.
Yeah.
I still think it is a possibility.
I honestly look at this and I looked at his IMDb. He hasn't really done much. He was in an episode of a Nickelodeon TV show that you would not know the name of. He was in an episode of Criminal Minds Beyond Borders. He hasn't really done too much. And it's one of those things that, like, I would have to imagine that they just sort of killed it, like, or he killed it in the auditions and stuff like that. But along the same lines, I don't like it's just seeing those little things that he did throughout season 1 of the only thing I've seen him in. Like, it's just when I'm like, show a little bit more emotion here, because you honestly and that was it. And he probably has done better and all that, and I applaud him. By the time this is done, or they start filming with this, they probably would have done season 3, maybe season 4 of Andy Mack. And I honestly want to be proven wrong. I honestly want to be proven wrong that he's, going to be great in this.
Yeah, and we didn't know the kid who played Spider-Man recently. Yeah. We hadn't seen him in anything before. All of a sudden, he showed up in Civil War.
Well, I mean, if you think about this, you go back to the 90s, we didn't know an actor who got brought in halfway, or in season 4, I think, of the Growing Pains. And now he's finally won an Oscar. I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio, he came in, a good majority of the way through the series run.
I was going to make a joke about Ben, but I could not for the life of me remember the name of the guy who played Ben on Growing Pains. And I don't know that he can either. Certainly his agent doesn't remember.
Hey, he was in Battle of the Network Stars here, this reboot that they did.
Yeah, was it just because they needed someone beat up on? And no one would feel bad if we beat up on Ben. That kid got hit with the ugly stick so many times. I'm sorry, that's rude. That's absolutely cruel. I'm not a pretty man. I can't just make fun of actors, but I can because I do, and it's the internet.
Yeah. But anyways, so before Corey says anything else that's going to get him in trouble, we're gonna talk some Star Wars news. We have 2 stories that came from the same place that we're going to combine into one.
They come from a galaxy far, far away.
Yes.
A long last week ago.
Yeah. And I should preface this by saying I have still not seen anything on Star Wars The Last Jedi. I am doing my best to go in blind, so...
You're going in dry for the Jedi.
Exactly. I'm saving myself for The Last Jedi. But no, so 2 things that they announced on a conference call last week that Disney CEO Bob Iger announced is that Disney is developing a live-action Star Wars TV series that will be exclusive to Disney's new streaming service. Now, we could talk about the streaming service all we want, but we'll save that for when there's more to it, because right now we're hearing a lot of rumor and speculation. But the service, which is set to launch in 2019, the series Star Wars series will be joined by 3 other live-action shows based on Disney properties. One of them being Marvel, one of them on Monsters Inc. Monsters Inc. live action thing? I don't see that one working. That one has to be animated. And then the third one based on the High School Musical franchise. All of these are safe bets. All of these, honestly, all 4 of these seem like enough to get the right amount of people to subscribe to their service. But the question I have for you, Corey, is what do you want to see out of a live action TV series set in the Star Wars universe?
It's a question of how much of it is stars versus different planets. How much of it can they film in Atlanta, like Walking Dead, and try to make it look like different stuff? And I don't know.
Well, to be fair though, Guardians Volume 2 was filmed in Atlanta and London.
Right. Yeah. And the first of the new trilogy was filmed in London.
Yeah.
They've done a great job with this. One of the things that I remember as a kid was there was the Star Wars made for TV stuff based around the Ewoks. There was a couple Ewok movies made for TV, and it was very easy to do because they were just all out in the redwoods. They were probably filmed out here. I've never actually checked, but it would make sense since this is where Lucas Arts and everything is, and we just happen to have a lot of those trees. We've waited a long time for a Star Wars live action TV series. It's been talked about since the prequels came out. It was certainly something that we wished for as kids before the prequels, but after the prequels all happened, it was like, oh yeah, they're going to do a Star Wars for TV at some point, and they kept saying it, and then we would get cartoon series here and there, and we got the original Clone Wars by Genndy Tartakovsky, thank you. And then we got the 3D animated Clone Wars by somebody who doesn't have any respect for the stuff that came before him. And we've got the current series, which I hear is quite good. I'm interested to see what they do, but this is more interesting to me than the next series of films, because the next series of films, we kind of heard that after episode 9, there is potential to still continue with the characters like Rey and Finn. It's one of the other things that I've been hearing lately, is that those characters might continue on, but they just won't be episode 10 or whatever. It'll be something else. And maybe that's what this is. I want to get as far away from the Skywalker Kenobi clans as possible.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, honestly, the Skywalker saga would be great to end at 9 movies.
Yeah, and if Rey is turned out to be relative to one of those clans, I'm not against that. It's just, and I certainly wouldn't mind seeing more of Daisy as the character and John Boyega as his character. I like these characters. I like these people, these actors who are portraying them, and I like their stories so far. But I keep aching for Star Wars to be more. You know, it just feels very tight for something that is supposed to be space opera that should be huge. And I don't want huge, like, I don't want it to be like Game of Thrones where there's just so many fucking characters thrown up all over the screen and you have to keep track of everybody's dumb goddamn names and like, wait, who's this guy again? Who did he fucking kill or kill and fuck or whatever word they do that on the show? I don't want that. I want coherent, followable storylines, but I want it to be about the greater universe and not necessarily. I know a couple people, Beat actually said this in the chat when he first posted it, is like Knights of the Old Republic or get the fuck out. I don't necessarily need that, but I understand the appreciation for that because that is an exciting time for fans of these stories and their histories. But there's just so much potential. And I wouldn't mind a fucking Farscape style show with Jim Henson's Muppets doing I mean, that's the Star Wars that I grew up with. You have that cantina. There was just so much potential in that one room. That's what made Star Wars exciting. And yeah, lightsabers are awesome. But you know what's awesome also? Not having lightsabers all the fucking time.
Yeah. Here's something I want to throw to you as a possibility. And also this will tie in with the other story. Because there's Rian Johnson, the writer and director of Star Wars Last Jedi, is set to create a new Star Wars trilogy, an all-new Star Wars trilogy that they said is going to be separate from the episodic Skywalker saga. He's going to write and direct the first episode or the first movie in this trilogy, and then oversee the other two. You know, maybe write them or something like that. Could this be the possibility of getting what we were promised with the Dark Tower movie and TV shows and stuff like that, where the TV show that we get ties in with Rian Johnson's movies?
Maybe, but that still doesn't feel, that's still too tied together. You know, I want, if you've got a whole fucking
I mean tied together, not like okay, we got the same actors, but because with what I'm getting with that, with hearing him, you know, it's going to be something set in the, you know, it's in the Star Wars universe, but it's not focusing in on anyone named Skywalker or
no, but I mean,
or whatever.
but it's still like, I don't want them tied together with each other.
Yeah,
I don't mind a new trilogy that is its own series of stories that are all tied in together, because that makes sense. They're a trilogy, and I don't mind a TV series that's all tied together because it's a fucking TV series. Unless you do the every season is a new storyline, like American Horror Story or whatever. I don't mind any of that. It's the, oh, well, I get a movie, season of a TV show, movie, season of a TV show. I'm not looking for that giant epic tale. I want a giant epic universe that has a lot of tales. And yes, you can have some crossover. You can have some, like, this character shows up in this thing and Sin City the fuck out of it. That's fine. But I still, like, if you want to do a story about not necessarily Boba Fett, but about the racing from Mandalorians. Is that right? I don't fucking know anymore. Like, that's how far gone I am from Star Wars in some ways. Mandalorians. Thank you. I get it confused with midichlorians.
Yeah,
and it's all bullshit that didn't work. But if you want to follow the Mandalorian ideas and stuff, or have a character that's like that, it's kind of like Firefly. It's the joke that they did on the Cleveland show about Firefly is when you have a ship full of Han Solos, then it makes Han Solo not special. And that's kind of what I want, is I want the specialness. Yeah. I want the inventiveness. I want you bring new characters, you bring new creatures, you bring new designs, you bring new ideas to it. And so it's not a bunch of, like, I don't want 50 hours to tell one story. I want a really great story in 6 hours. I want the BBC season in 10 episodes.
Yeah,
that tells a whole tale. That's more exciting. One, because I'm old, and there's something to be said for investing in yourself and pouring into something and just being a part of it. But that giant level of, like, watching 16 hours to get all of the Lord of the Rings, and now Amazon's gonna fuck with that and bring you a prequel series. It's like, I don't need that. I don't need to Wheel of Time myself. I got too little time as it is, and I just want to have a couple hours that I can jump in and enjoy something and jump out. And yes, explore the universe and explore the story and take it to its fullest degree. But it's like the new Blade Runner was almost 3 hours. Did you need it to be? No. And apparently it didn't work out because people didn't watch it. Sometimes you got to be entertaining and cut the wheat from the chaff and just give us a good solid story in a time allowed that makes sense for a human fucking being who has a job, a job. That's me. I got to get up and go to work in the morning.
Yeah. I don't know. I honestly, I don't know what they're going to do. I like the idea of the setting of the TV show being like if it's, so if you split up the Star Wars universe into quadrants, and we've mainly been in quadrant 1, and Rian Johnson's thing is going to take place in quadrant 4 or something like that, I would be okay if this movie or if the TV shows also took place in quadrant 4.
I mean, if they, because of the people that work for the company, and we're talking about Disney, Disney owns Marvel, they could do the Marvel thing.
Yeah.
They could have a series, a trilogy here, and then some crossover stuff over here, and work all this stuff up. I am not anxious to see someone else step in and try to do that same thing again. We've seen the challenges that Warner Brothers has had trying to do it with DC. We will see the challenges of their. Well, we saw the blow up of the Universal Monster Dark Universe stuff. That like, oh yeah, we're going to do this whole big crossover with all these Universal Monster characters. Here's your Tom Cruise movie. Where is everybody? Hey, what up, yo?
Yeah.
It's not Jack Reacher 3. It's a mummy movie. You guys like mummy movies? You came to the last series, right? Oh, those were better? Really? Brendan Fraser? Really?
Yeah.
By the way, they were far. But yeah, that's the point. Is it's such a huge risk. I like that Disney can take risks. And if anybody can pull it off, it seems they've been the ones who, or people who worked with them have done it. But it's just like, I get that Star Wars is huge.
Yeah.
It absolutely is a phenomena that is almost unparalleled, and maybe unparalleled. Maybe what else is as big and beloved as Star Wars is, for the amount of time that it's been in the zeitgeist of the average person. Like, in my lifetime, Star Wars came out and now is at this fucking zenith of, like, everybody's just been going crazy about Star Wars. At least every 10 years or so, there's like this big drive to get more Star Wars and more Star Wars and more Star Wars. And it left the hands of the original creator, and yet it somehow remains bigger than ever. That is a huge thing to have achieved. And definitely, if there's something that deserves to be able to just dominate, I guess it's that. And I guess it's Disney, because Disney is dominating these properties now. But I just would love to see some good stories. I like Rogue One a lot because of what it was, not necessarily because of what it did, but because it was a standalone tale that was, yes, a zero issue to the original series. But I enjoyed it because these characters that came into that, I didn't enjoy the parts where they relied on characters that pre-existed. But I enjoyed seeing all these new characters and these new ideas and a new story and a new feeling for the Star Wars universe all at once. That was more exciting to me. And maybe I'll get to a point, and again, it's never always about me. These are just my opinions. I'm sure there are so many people out there who would just want what you said. The 50-hour epic of the TV series and movie trilogy and everything. There are certainly people who would just be all over that like rats on cheese. And I would probably watch as much of it as I could. And if the movie grabbed me, I would enjoy it for the ride until I die prematurely in the middle of it. Like, I'm never going to see my last Marvel film. I'm never going to see my last Star Wars film. I'm not going to make it that long. But I would just rather, I would be more excited about something that is contained and just impeccable like the original series was to me. Those first 3 movies were just the greatest things in the world to me, and never let me down the whole way through. And I like the Ewoks, and I like the original Ewok song. And it was just when somebody came back and started fucking with it and retooling everything to piss me off and lost me for a good number of years. But now I'm back.
God,
I'm here.
Never could that
excite me. Fucking idiot who put flashlights in replacement for guns in ET.
But yeah, so that is going to do it for the news. But hey, if you want to be like Brian Jensen and be our newest Patreon partner, yes, Brian Jensen, this is your moment. You get a big old thank you from myself, from Corey, from everyone here at Galactic Network.
Kelly Clarkson is saying this is your moment.
I'm not even going to try to sing because I'm horrible. But if you want to be like Brian Jensen, it's really easy. Go to gncast.com/support. On that, you will find the Patreon link, or you can go to patreon.com/galacticnetcasts. And for as little as $1, that's it, just $1 a month, not an episode, not a week, a month, you could support the show. You can help keep the lights on here, because I hate to tell you, but I'm afraid of the dark. I don't like being, well, I'm not afraid of the dark. I don't like being in the dark. And so if this helps, keep the lights on here where I get to talk to Corey and and Growly, then hey, support. Keep it to where I can talk to my best friends in the whole wide world that I've never met face to face. You know,
someday.
The other part thing of this is if you think we swear too much, and I don't think I've sworn at all today on the show. I don't know.
I got you covered.
Yeah. You can go to the survey bit.ly/EN survey 2017. That is capital E, capital N, capital S, lowercase Irvay 2017 in number.
Lowercase Irvay is the guy from Fantasy Island, right?
D-plane, boss, D-plane. That one.
Oh, I'm so glad you got that reference.
I don't remember seeing the show, but I know the reference. But you go there. It is like a 20-question survey. It wouldn't take. It's not going to take you that long. And hey, what do you want us to talk about? What do you think? Do you want us to swear? Do you not want us to swear? Do you want to speak in German accents? That's going to sound horrible, but what? Basically, we will take all these things into consideration and try to improve the show. So, go do it.
For more on this Galactic Network podcast, go to gncast.com. That's GNCASTS.com.